Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Grow Your Tutoring Business. We have a really special guest. I'm really excited to welcome him onto the podcast. Welcome to Lee Parkinson, or better known as Mr. P does ICT. Just a really quick overview of, like, you're just famously, let's be honest, let's just put it out there. I've got a couple of tutors just started working for me, and I was like, "Oh, have you heard of Mr. P does ICT?" And they were like, "Oh my God, yeah." And then they started like they telling me everything because I've been out of the classroom for a little while. And so people are just really excited about what you're doing and how, but more importantly, like how you do it. Just give us a
Yeah,
bit of a, well, first of all, welcome. Like
thank
it's
you.
on to share the space. Just give us a bit of an overview, Lee, about like your route into teaching and
Yeah,
then what led you towards like ICT.
yeah. Thank you very much for having me. Really do appreciate it. And yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one. I wasn't one of those people that have dreamt of being a teacher my whole
Right.
life. I just sort of fell into it. So when I was younger, I was quite into acting. I did quite a bit of acting in my youth, up into my teenage years, and then,
Mm.
that age where you become obsessed with what your mates think about you more than anything else. And they used
Yeah.
to take the mick out of me with the acting.
Oh
So
no.
when I was about 15, 16, I got a call back for Hollyoaks.
Right.
And it meant I missed this big rugby tournament at school. And the lads just tore me to shreds. And it just, yeah. And I just sort of went, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. Which obviously now I look back and regret. So yeah, so I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And my girlfriend, when I was in sixth form, she applied to uni to be a primary school teacher. And I literally just thought, oh, I reckon I'll be all right at that. And then I just applied, and that was it. Not the same uni, thankfully, because yeah, it didn't last much longer once we left school. But yeah, so what got into it that way. But I think it helps. I think what teaching is majority of the time is just acting, isn't it? It's just putting on a performance for uh quite a tough crowd most days, isn't it? So yeah, so I've been a teacher now for the past 17 years. I still work part-time in my school. Love my school. They have been nothing but supportive with me
Mm.
and everything that I've gone on to do. And I like to think that that works both ways, and I'm always going above and beyond for the school as well. Um, and yeah, the ICT thing was. Again, I think because of the acting background and the performance side of things that I really like, what ICT did was opened up those opportunities for me. So when I became a teacher, I was just always exploring ways in which technologies can just bring that curriculum to life. So,
Okay.
I was never the most talented writer, terrible speller. Writing has a purpose, obviously, but that wasn't really my forte, so to speak. I was very much more about bringing that writing to life. So from the moment I started teaching, I was always exploring ways in which the technology could do that. The way I became the ICT subject leader in my school was I just made a video for the Year 6 Leavers Assembly when I was an NQT, and my head teacher just was astounded at the fact I'd got pictures to move to music, and called me Spielberg ever since. And he was like, "You are clearly gifted with this, so it would be an honor if you led it in this." I don't think he said those exact words, but I
What
like to
would you
think he
say
did.
that, Lowly? Because that sounds amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So that was it. I took over the ICT role, and
Okay.
it sort of went from there. And then obviously got married 2010. Found out we were pregnant in the autumn, so we got married in the July. Found out we were expecting in the autumn, and then went for the first scan and found we were having triplets. We were expecting triplets.
Okay.
So that sort of changed.
Wow.
Yeah, that changed things a lot, and there was all of a sudden a dawning of blood. You're gonna have to start looking to bring in a little bit more money and make sure you can buy 3 sets of nappies and all this. So that was the point where I thought, right, let's look in. So I've been teaching for a good few years there, and I was looking at moving into leadership, and I
Mhm.
actually applied for a couple of assistant head jobs and um, didn't get them. And my head teacher was like, "Look, I know where you're wanting to go, so I want to help you. Let's." Well, he said it to me like he was trying to help, but now on reflection, I realised because the kids were there and I was just shattered beyond belief. I was just, peeling my eyes back every day in
Right.
class. I think he looked at it going, maybe I shouldn't have him in charge of a class full time. So he said, "Look, why don't you come out of the classroom and cover PPA across the school?" and it'll give you experience of teaching across the school, and we'll focus on leading your subject. So then you've got experience, you go for another job and you've got experience of building a subject across the whole school, experience teaching, blah. So I was like, yeah, that sounds great. And obviously the subject was ICT, or it was sort of turning into computing at the time. And I said, look, I just want a set of iPads. If I'm going to do it, I don't want to be stuck in a computing suite with
Mm.
Windows laptops that, are still running Windows 95, even though it was 2011. And so we bought a set of iPads. And, when we were using those iPads in class, you can't stick the work children are doing in books. And so I started blogging, and I was
Okay.
blogging all the students' work through a school blog, and that was getting quite a lot of traction and engagement online. Then I was getting a lot of requests to, demonstrate how we were doing these exciting creative ideas in class, to which I started my own teacher blog and my own teacher Twitter account, and then eventually the Facebook page. And
Mm.
then by the end of that academic year, I had been asked to do a couple of CPD sessions, and had done a couple of after school training and a couple of teach meets, and the feedback from that was really positive. And then Alan Pete, who he's retired now, but was a fantastic literacy consultant. I sat in on one of his training days. It was actually the day I went on paternity leave. He came into our school, and it was by far the best CPD training day I've ever had. And he was a bit of an idol of mine. I loved this stuff, still do. And he actually reached out and sort of said, "Look, we'd love to work with you. We think you'd be a real good asset to work alongside." And he gave me so much. Him and his wife Julie gave me so much support in sort of making the decision to go part time and
Mm.
start my own training business. And it's a real sort of sliding doors moment, because I always remember sitting. So the kids were toddlers running around in nappies, and I remember sitting with my wife going, "I've got to make a decision here. I can either stay full time as a teacher, or I could, go part time, start my own business." But the risks are you can't guarantee the income, you can't guarantee the work. And I remember my
Mm.
wife was really reluctant. She was like, "Yeah, but Lee, we've got to pay the bills, we've got to do this, that, and the other." And I was like, "Yeah, but if I don't do this, I think I'll regret it for the rest of my life." So anyway, we took the decision to do it, and yeah, the rest is history. It's just sort of gone from strength to strength. So I still work part time in my school, as I've said,
Yeah.
and then the other part of the week I'm traveling all around the country and beyond, leading CPD sessions, and from sharing the ideas and resources, and then obviously into the social media content of funny, sort of hopefully relatable videos about life as a teacher. It's sort of grown this audience where, you know, we've um, we've got the podcast now. We've just
Mm.
announced another live tour with the podcast. We released our third book recently. So yeah, it's absolutely incredible. And it's been a tough ride. It's been hard work. But I'm always so sort of grateful and thankful for people's support and sort of belief in me. So yeah, that's what's brought me here today. Yeah, where I am.
Well, that's the just going to rewind a little bit. So
Yeah,
that
yeah.
at the end of the first year of being sort of out of the classroom or doing the PPA cover and having a bit more of a focus on ICT, which led to the idea of the blog posts. That
Yeah.
that took off. So that was just from my own understanding. Then that would just have been on your school blog.
So yeah, so it started on the school blog. So I was sort of using the iPads in class, and the idea was how can the iPads support learning in lots of different ways. And obviously, I would cover some computing, but it was more how can the iPad support learning in English, in science, in
Yeah,
history. And obviously, most of the content children were creating was sort of multimedia content. So they were
yeah,
making videos to explain science investigations. They were, writing newspaper articles and then recording themselves doing CBBS or BBC News Round videos.
yeah,
And the idea was we can't stick that in a book. How can we evidence that learning? Which is what sparked the school blog. And so I
yeah.
was just sharing the students' learning on that school blog, which again added a real purpose to that learning, because we were then tweeting it out and getting so much. So children were having a real audience for their learning. It
But then
wasn't a
how do
case.
you, Lee, how do you then get like eyes on that? Because that feels like quite a closed off platform still. So how
Mm.
do other people get eyes on that amazing idea?
Yeah, so that we actually started school social media pages. So I had a school Twitter account and a school Facebook page.
Right.
And so we would link in all the blogs there. And the
Mm.
Facebook page was very much more our closed school community, it was more
Sure.
parents. But then Twitter, there was at the time such a thriving sort of
Yeah.
education tweeters, as they were
Yeah.
called. And you'd put things out there and people would share it, people, and then that's where the request came of like, I'd love to do this in my class, but I don't know how to do it. You should start your own teacher blog. So that's what got me going with. So I'd share children's learning on the school blog, then I'd write a blog post to sort of talk through how to do it. And I mean, I was up till gone midnight a lot of nights, and there was there was nothing to that other than, oh, if it helps another teacher, then
Yeah.
it's a good thing to do. And it sort of went from there, built a bit of a following on Twitter and then obviously Facebook. And that's where then the requests led to, can you come into our school and speak to all
Wow.
our staff? And
Wow.
yeah, all from there.
Wow. And then the conversation with your wife, that was like, look, I want to take this risk, but we've got
Yeah, yeah,
three toddlers running around.
yeah,
I've spoken about this. I've had a very similar conversation and had the same response. How did you, even though we've had that kind of like conversation and gone, well, I don't think we should, but you do it anyway. Like,
yeah.
was obviously it was supportive, but was there still that management of nerves and anxiety?
Oh, absolutely. It was a massive decision. And we sat there umming and ahhing, and you talk through all different scenarios, this, that, and the other. It
Mm.
was, and it is a big risk. And people often message me now. I mean, things are a lot worse now in education. You've got teachers who are to the point of burnout, where the impact this job is having on their mental health and
Yeah,
well-being just makes it untenable for so many teachers. And I get so many messages along the lines of, I don't think I can do this anymore, but I don't know if I leave, I can go and get another job. And look, I never want to encourage anyone to leave teaching, but what I always say is teachers have the most transferable set of skills going. I
yeah,
think we do within the remit of teaching, you pretty much do everyone else's job. Like, you could name any job, and in some way, shape, or form, you sort of do it as a teacher anyway.
yeah,
And there are so many people who go on to other jobs, which is sad in a way, because it's just a sad state of affairs as far as where our education system is, where we can't keep teachers in the profession. But yeah, what teachers bring to any job, the transferable set of skills is impressive. And there
yeah,
was loads of things that helped me go into that business side of it. There's loads of things that it was a massive learning curve.
yeah.
Starting your own business is you don't really learn much at school yourself. And
No.
I went straight from uni into teaching, so I'd never experienced any business likes
Mm.
situation. So it was a massive learning curve. But
It's
yeah,
also weird though, Lee, isn't it? Like, um, I did business as a degree
mm,
and then didn't do any business until I was like 37, 38, not
yeah.
properly. And it was useless because the world had changed so much. Like
Oh yeah, yeah,
social media,
yeah.
just adding social media in and how to handle
Mm,
that whole, this is how you can grow a business. This is, and in a way, I think we spoke about it just before we went live. Like it's such an amazing opportunity, the technology that we have,
yeah,
but
yeah.
also there are negatives to it as well.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
with your kind of dipping your toe into Twitter first of all, and then growing that community on there, where did Facebook come in, and what was the so I don't really know how to word it, but how did you start like developing ideas for the humor side and that like you said, that
Mm,
relatable content done in that really
yeah, yeah.
sort of warm way?
Yeah, it was interesting. So when I first started my own teacher Twitter account and Facebook page, it must have been at the same time.
Yeah.
I'd say for the first year, it was just linking in the blog posts. It was just sharing what I was doing in class and that sort of thing. And I suppose what I've always tried to do is sort of keep up with the way that social media has evolved. So
Mm,
all of a sudden, you were getting more memes sort of appearing, and
mm,
I would then start putting the odd teacher meme out. So it wasn't me on camera to begin with. There was probably a period of, again, a few months where it was just image sort of meme type pictures that I was put, and they started taking off and then all of a sudden there was little video clip memes that I went, and then that evolved into me being on camera, sort of going, oh, have you ever done this as a teacher, or has this ever happened to you? And it
Yeah.
sort of went from there. And I think that also coincided with the business side of things. So
Mm.
as the business took off, it was like, how can I grow an audience to make people aware of the training I provide without obviously then giving all the ideas in CPD away? So I would still always share a couple of tips and a couple of ideas a week, but then match that with other types of content that were a bit more humorous and hopefully relatable. And again, it was people's feedback. So you'd put videos out and you just get messages. I just get messages from teachers who said, "Oh, I've had an absolutely dreadful day. I'm really struggling this, but I've just got home. I've just had a little scroll through, seen your video that talks about whatever it was, and it's made me realize I'm not the only one. We all go through it, and it's put a smile
Mm.
on my face." So it's always very much my motivation with social media is like, if it can add a bit of value to someone, whether that's to inform and educate or just to entertain, then it's worthwhile. And
Yeah,
I've always been very appreciative of people's feedback, which for the most part is very positive. There is you do
absolutely, mate.
always
Yeah.
open yourself to negative side of things, and that was a little bit challenging in the beginning, but I think I've got to a point now where I can sort of deal with it
You
in
get
certain.
you get many like negative messages or comments.
Oh yeah, yeah, all the time. No, nowhere
Really?
near as bad as not nowhere near as bad as I often think. I don't know what it must be like for other people
Mm.
in the public eye. Mine's still a very niche market,
It's
which I
big
quite
though.
like.
Yeah, I
Say what, sorry?
suppose. It's still big though, isn't it?
Oh yeah, yeah, but I mean, it's very much you don't get many. Most of them are school staff, so most of them
Right,
are
okay.
people with
Yeah.
a little bit of common sense and a
Okay.
little bit of empathy. But yeah, there has been, if a post does go big, so it sort of goes beyond teaching, you can guarantee you'll always get
Right.
people go. And a lot of it's just the sort of having a rant and moan about teachers, just
Oh,
generally, you
having
know.
6 weeks off at summer.
Oh, all that, all those tropes, all the sort of you have all these holiday, and that's it's duck cover water's back
Always.
now. The
Yeah.
only time I get is if I make a video. The one that really annoys me is if I make a video where I'm sort of, acting out a scene, or I'm basically relatable sort of teaching stuff, and then
Mm.
someone will just have a go at me because maybe they're having issues at the school they're at. Maybe they're not agreeing with what the particular teacher or school's saying, and they then will vent their frustrations directly at me. So they'll then say, "Oh, this just goes to show that you as a teacher doesn't have an understanding of children's SEN needs, and you're clearly dismissive of neurodivergent." And it's like, you
Right.
could not, you don't know me, right? You cannot take a silly little video I've made on TikTok and then make an assumption that I'm a terrible teacher and don't have the needs of children who are neurodiverse in my, it's that's gets, but again, nothing you can do about it, and there's no point even engaging with these people because if you do, you're giving them the reaction they want. So you just try and sort of
Isn't it? Did,
get
did you
past it.
used
And
to? Did you used to engage?
I have done not very. I've always taken the stance of what people want is they want you to react, and so
Mhm.
actually you can't have it. The way I look at it with the internet is you can't argue with people on the internet. It is
No.
pointless. It's just
Yeah.
wasted time. You can put your opinion across through a video. People agree or disagree with it, but if you then spend your time trying to justify or trying
Yeah.
to argue, but it's just like because no one wins an argument on the internet. Whoever, both sides will
Yeah.
think they're in the right, and social media, we'll talk about this a little bit more, I'm sure, but
Yeah.
it needs to rebrand itself, social media, because it's not actually social. There's nothing about social media that really is social anymore. Potentially early days it was.
Yeah.
What it is content media. It's just
Mm.
content media. So you've just got to see it for what it is, and everyone wants to voice her. Everyone's got an opinion,
Mm.
but like I say, most people's opinions are a little bit like, oh, I won't say that joke in
Yeah.
case I'm not supposed to swear, but yeah.
Do you know what I've about 2 or 3 years ago, this is well before I had any audience at all. I was listening to somebody talk about that kind of like growth, like, almost like being famous in your niche, right? That's probably the
Mm.
best way to kind of describe what's happened with you. And I know it goes beyond that, but like also just for people who, on the off chance, don't know who you are, it's like you have something like 500,000 on Facebook. Is that right?
Yeah, just short of 500,000 on Facebook now. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's like insane, really, isn't it? It's like insane
Mm,
that people. That yeah, someone was talking about like their growth, and they were saying that it's almost like back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, maybe the 80s, where you had someone famous and you tried to be outside the theatre door or before they was walking into the footy stadium, you try to grab an autograph. It's almost like getting a response from somebody is like similar to that.
yeah,
But
yeah,
like
yeah,
if
yeah,
you're waiting outside the theatre door, it'd be like positive. You'd be like, oh, that's
yeah.
amazing. Or if it's your football hero, you'd be like, oh my gosh, you wouldn't even be able to say anything. You'd be like, just sign that for me, please. And you'd be like, absolutely. Well, I would be. I'd go weak at the knees or whatever.
Mm.
It's almost like that, but it's the negative side of it.
Oh
And that's
yeah, yeah,
what you say
yeah.
with social. It's like, oh, someone's responded to me and now I've got them and I can, yeah, it's a bit of strange
Yeah,
stuff.
it's a weird feel because I've never got it. I see a lot of content like social media. So what social media wants is you to be as angry as possible. The one emotion that keeps people on social media the longest is anger. So you will see content on your feed that winds you up because
Yeah,
social media wants you to stay on the
okay.
platform as long as
Keeps you
possible.
there.
That's again the reason it's not social is it's not about
Yeah.
connecting people. It's about hacking your attention to keep you on there as long as possible. And so but I see so much content that I scroll through and I just think, oh, that's a load of rubbish. But I
Mm,
never feel the need to
mm,
comment and sort of think my opinion is it needs to be heard by the way. It's like no, that's not. I'll do it through making videos, but I just think I'm not, and the time as well. Like you could ask my wife, she'll tell me I spend more than enough time on my phone and on social media.
mm.
If I spent every minute going through and responding to comments and I try my best with messages, but I really struggle with that sometimes. But ultimately, there's got to be a cutoff where it can't take over your whole life, and I think I'm getting a better balance with it really, which is taking a while, but I'm hopefully getting there.
Do you know, that's I want to come back to this because I think it's important for us to talk about, but there's also um I'd love to chat about the whole growth, like when it started to take off with the business and the training, and then you definitely put out videos that are relatable to people, and they really connect with that. Then that's led into other opportunities. So, for example, the podcast. Like, when did you get
Yeah.
involved? Like, where did the ideas for the books come from? That kind of like next phase of the business. When did that start?
Yeah, so the business started now. It was about 10 years ago, maybe even longer than that, maybe 2013 is when the
Mm,
business started. And obviously the videos, probably 2015, 16 was where it really started to grow, and Facebook was just building creators, that organic and that's where it
yeah.
really just went sort of massive. Um, and then the podcast started in 2018. So my brother's a HLTA in a school, and he can be one of the funniest people, you know. Well, he's one of the funniest people I know, mainly because I genuinely don't know how he functions as an adult, to be honest. But it very much entertains me. So we were on a family holiday, and we were just sat around. Now I listen to a lot of podcasts. I have done for, probably from the moment I started the business, where I was traveling around, and there's only so many, song playlists you can listen to. So I really got into listening to podcasts, and that industry itself was growing.
Yeah.
And so we sat around after a day. We were away in Florida. My dad had retired and he'd promised us he'd take us away. So we were there after a day of being at the park, and we just sat in the pool and we were just sharing funny stories like, oh, one time this, and I said, you know what, we should sit down, record this, and just put it out as a podcast. Um, and yeah, and that's what it started.
Okay.
Just started like that, and again, it sort of started to grow. And obviously, I think without my social media platforms, the chances are it would have never got off. So, but
Mm,
because there was already an established platform from the
yeah.
6, 7 years of me building that, there was almost this instant audience for it. And it just sort of took off from there, and obviously during the pandemic was where we saw a massive intake of listeners because when all these teachers, school staff are working in the bubbles and not having that staff room connection with other
Mm,
adults, the podcast sort of helped with that a little bit. and a lot of people found it and just enjoyed the light-hearted look. So it's not as serious as maybe some of the other social media content I make. It's very much of the humorous side of things. So it's me and my brother just sharing, funny stories that people have submitted, of what's happened in school, what's happened, and we sort of riff off the back of that, and it might spark a discussion about something or spark a memory that we've had. And I think people just find that really relatable. And again, we all go through, teaching is, it's a weird job in that there's so many aspects that are universal. Like we all go through the same sort of struggles, but then every single school will be different in ways. So I think it just makes, hopefully, again, just adds a bit of value, makes people laugh, makes them realize that they're not the only ones that go through the same struggles, which is very much an echo of what my social media has been.
Yeah.
And yeah, so we'd done a couple of live shows. So when with the first one, but maybe 2019. So the podcast had been going for about a year, and then we decided to put a live show on, and that did quite well. And then we put a couple of others on independently, and then we had Phil McIntyre sort of approach and wanted to work with us and potentially put a tour on for us.
Oh,
I
wow.
always remember I was supposed to meet them the day before the lockdowns came in. So I was down
No.
in London because I was doing a course, and then I was supposed to meet them, and then they
Yeah.
announced the lockdowns, and obviously their industry just shut off. There was no way of working around it. So yeah, that got delayed until we were back to normal. But yeah, we got a tour organized, which was great, and then we've since done another. Well, we've just announced the third tour. Um, and the books were the same. The books, we got approached to write a book, or I got approached to write a book a couple of years before, and time-wise, I just didn't have the time. Then the podcast started, and I thought, well, I'll write it with Adam, and it'll be something that might help Adam financially as well.
Mm.
Um, and that just happened because of the pandemic. So we just found ourselves with that little bit more time during the
Yeah.
lockdowns because I wasn't doing the training, still working in school and doing the remote stuff in school, but then had the time where I wasn't doing the training. So yeah, I was able to sit down and write the books, and yeah, that just again went down so well. It was number two Sunday Times bestseller,
Oh,
which was incredible, and obviously gone on and done the other two off the back of that.
yeah. That's amazing. How do you decide? Because this must happen a lot, like where people might like approach you with ideas or something to do. How do you decide which ones you move towards and which ones you say no to?
Um, Good question. I think it's very much dependent on yeah, it's time's the biggest thing. So it's very
Okay.
much what have I got time for? And I think what the pandemic taught me is that I was traveling here, there, and everywhere. I was living on the road 3, 4 nights a week, and I just wasn't very present at home.
Mm.
And obviously, the job was what it was, and I didn't know any different. Then when the lockdowns hit, and like my kids were I don't know if there is a perfect age for it, but they were sort of at 7, 8, 8, 9, I think 7, 8, 9, and they were sort of at such a really good age where they were doing a little bit of home learning, but we were very fortunate in that we never, we were very lucky during those lockdowns that we were never affected by the illness or our
Mm.
family, close family. So what it did was sort of create a bit of a reset with me to sort of put things into a bit more of a priority.
Okay.
And I genuinely I thought coming out of the pandemic now, I will be able to be home a lot more because I'll just do more of the training online. But then no one wants the training on Zoom anymore. Everyone wants it in person. And don't get
Yeah.
me wrong, I get why.
Mm.
So yeah, so now what I've tried to do is be a little bit more picky about what I do so I can try and be a bit more present at home. So that's very much the main element of what and it's got to interest me. I think it's got to be something
Yeah.
that and I always come back to that idea of will it add value to people? Is it something that people are gonna enjoy, gonna find informative, gonna actually use, or whatever it might be? So yeah, they're what sort of helps me make those
Okay.
decisions.
I know there's a lot of people who will resonate with that because I think I agree with you what you said earlier about that transferable skills out of the classroom.
Mm,
And most of the time we have all of these ideas or the passion for teaching and learning, and I support people. I don't support people out of the classroom. I that was my original idea of what I wanted to do.
Yeah,
But then it was actually more about supporting those who had already made that decision, probably already left anyway, and then needed some kind of support around the business element of running a business, particularly starting up.
yeah.
But it's amazing what happens when you've got headspace. It's amazing what
Oh,
happens
yeah,
when you start to just, for some, heal from the experience of leaving teaching behind. And then suddenly it's like, oh, I can do this and this is okay. And then it's like, actually, I've got the opposite problem of I don't know what to do to, oh my God, I've got all these ideas. I don't know which ones to go after. So to hear
yeah.
you talk about the whole, actually, let's look at what I really love. Let's pick things around so I can be more present for my family. They're like really like important things, aren't they?
Oh,
When
time is the most valuable thing. It's time's the most valuable thing to everyone, especially teachers.
yeah.
Which again is something, one of the main reasons why at the minute I'm so passionate about trying to get as many teachers and school staff to embrace AI, because
Yeah,
I just
great.
think
Yeah.
that is one of the best things to come along that can genuinely save teachers time.
So
Um,
tell us a little bit, Lee, because it's the Teach Mate, is that right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
tell
yeah,
us a
yeah,
little bit about this because I see it everywhere.
yeah. Oh,
Tell us a
bro.
little bit more about it.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. The BCS, I think, I've
Yeah.
just done a report. The British Computing Institution, I think, or something along those lines. Basically, a big institution. I've just done a report into secondary school teachers using AI, and they did a survey with like 5,000 secondary teachers, and TeachMate is used more than like Google and Microsoft for secondary
Wow,
school
no
teachers.
way.
Yeah, yeah. So with all the AI tools teachers are using, TeachMate's up there, which is it's just been it's
Amazing.
been incredible. So yeah, so I have been incredibly passionate about trying to get well, just basically trying to keep teachers in the profession. I know workload and well-being are the biggest issues, and I've been very outspoken about calling out poor practice that you see in schools that just increase workload with no real impact. And I've been very outspoken like that for years. And so as soon as this generative AI came along and I saw the potential of how that can save it, not be the solution to everything. Obviously, there's
Mm.
so many other issues. But as I started using it and seeing the potential, I just became obsessed with the opportunity it can bring to help teachers, um, and obviously, from working with so many teachers over a number of years, I know that one of the biggest barriers for teachers is their own confidence and knowledge in using technology. So, if you are going to use a large language model like ChatGPT, to get the best out of that technology, you need to know how to prompt it and what to put into it to get the best out of it. And I was demonstrating ChatGPT on training, but the feedback I was getting from teachers was always, "Oh, I've tried it, but actually the quality I get out of it isn't great." And it was like, well, that's because it's what you put into it, and obviously, again, as time poor teachers, that's a barrier being able to learn, how to, and sometimes you can end up putting a prompt in that's so lengthy and long, you might as well have just written the task from scratch first. So, alongside John Chippendall, who I've worked with for a number of years, we wanted to create a solution where the TeachMate is such a low barrier to entry, so that any teacher, no matter what their experience, what their confidence with tech is, they can basically utilize this AI to make their life easier.
Mm.
So we've just sort of streamlined the whole process. So for teachers, it's minimal input to get the maximum output. Obviously, it's fully GDPR compliant, the platform as well. So obviously, there are concerns with some of these other models. We've made sure it ticks all those boxes, and I think the government are about to announce something around AI safety in schools, which
Okay.
TeachMate have had a bit of an input on, sort
Oh,
of
that's good.
consulting, which is good. And obviously, what we can do with the AI is we can feed and train it on more specific education documentation, so we can sort of optimize the platform to make it as relevant for teachers working in England, Scotland, Wales, whatever it might be. And yeah, so it's just gone from strength to strength. We've just surpassed 250,000 teachers using it. We're getting more and more schools signed up because, again, it was something that I wanted schools to really get on board with because, it's teachers that benefit. And rather than doing what schools do, where they do these pointless token gestures for well-being, let's have a yoga staff meeting. This, no, no. If you want to improve a teacher's well-being, you've got to look at reducing workload. And what this AI tech can do, if it's utilized effectively, is it can save
Mhm.
teachers time. So for example, we've built over 100 tools, but I always say, if you were to go onto Family Fortunes and Gino Di Campo asked the question, we asked 100 teachers, what's your favorite task to do as a teacher? You said, write a risk assessment. Our survey said, no teacher gets into the profession because they love writing risk assessments. And I know
Yeah.
it needs to happen and it's important, but that
Mm.
can be quite a time consuming job alongside so many other admin tasks that actually detract and take away from the most important job of teaching. And
Mm.
what the TeachMate does is it's not perfect. It won't get everything spot on, but it'll do the heavy lifting. It'll
Mm.
do the bulk of it, and all of a sudden, what was a half an hour task is 5-10 minutes. And
Mm.
so having that platform that not only can streamline tasks so that you could, I mean, on a personal note, from using AI, I'm probably in the best shape now than I've ever been in. So when I turned 30, so I turned 39 in April, and I was like, I've got a year until I think I had a bit of a midlife crisis, to be honest. I was like,
The
I'm
big
turning
four
40.
O's coming at you, mate. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And it's like everyone does it, don't they? So they either go for the weight or the weight fitness side of things, or they get obsessed with motorbikes or cycling or whatever. I was very much like I want to get myself in the best shape I've ever been in before I'm 40. If I don't do it this side of 40, I'll probably never do it because your metabolism slows down and all that.
No, mate, I'm
Um
42. Don't tell me this. Come on. You said I'm on the downward slope now. Yeah.
yeah. And so I've set myself that goal,
Yeah.
and what I'm finding is I've got more time. I'm getting to the gym more
Mm.
because these tools that I'm using, AI, and again, I've sort of made social media help me with this as well. Is it's giving me that motivation. It's keeping me going with it and saving me time. So I actually got the team at TeachMate to build a couple of tools, such as is it like a calorie counter, so it'll work out your target calories, your macronutrients breakdown, based on what you exercise, how many steps you hit. There's an exercise planner one as well. So when I'm staying away in a hotel, I can go to the gym, put in what equipment they've got,
Mm.
say what I want to target, and it'll just write a workout plan for me. And then there's also the recipe generator. So you just go to your fridge, you put whatever ingredients you've got in, it'll write a recipe for you that hits a certain amount of calories. So for me, the motivation behind creating TeachMate was very much I want to help teachers become the best versions of themselves, both in and out the classroom.
Mm.
And it seems to really be having that effect. So we did a survey with teachers using TeachMate. And we've had over 1,500 teachers answer it, and we found it saves teachers on average more than 10 hours a week. 85% said it's improved the well-being. But the most important stat I think that came out of it was of those 1,500 teachers who answered, four-fifths of those who were considering leaving teaching actually cited TeachMate as a reason to stay.
Wow.
So it's actually helping
Yeah.
teachers stay in the profession in some way, which I just think is incredible.
Well,
Um, but for a lot of your audience, we get a lot of tutors using it as well because there's a lot of tools that can help when it comes to generating activities. And the benefit is it puts that power in your hands. So rather than you searching the internet for hours trying to find a resource, which is never quite what you want, you've got that ability now to make something bespoke to a particular student or link it to a particular interest or hobby they have.
yeah.
So one of the best tools that I use is the comprehension text and question generator, but the text can be of absolutely anything. So whatever the children have got an interest in, if they've got a niche interest in something for a child who's more of a reluctant reader or doesn't normally engage, you can find that interest, get that comprehension text about it, and then generate the questions to support it. So at the minute, I'm just doing loads of comprehension in class about Christmas songs. I'll just whack a Christmas song on, we'll listen to it as the children at the class. Then I've just got the TeachMate to generate comprehension questions and we just have a chat about it.
That's amazing. And it's fun. Like, so
Oh,
it
God,
keeps
yeah.
it fun, and it's not the same boring text that you have to do.
Yeah.
week in, year out often. Do you know, that's when I first started looking at this, the when ChatGPT got first or became a bit more mainstream. I was tutoring inside a school at the time, small groups, and
Yeah.
helping year five and year six. And I think I found it, or someone tagged me in something, and I started playing around in the evening. My first thought was, "Oh my God, comprehension!" Like if
Yeah.
generate, I mean, it wasn't very good, but it was enough to get excited about. And I remember going into
Yeah.
school the next morning, going up to the teacher, and you've got to look at this. Look, I think they were doing something around Egyptians. I was like, I'm just going to type this prompt in. Look at what it's
Yeah.
going to be. And it was a bit like she was the English lead. She was like, well, it's not like really amazing for year five. So I said, yeah, but now look, I'm going to get it to like do these questions. I know it's not amazing, but it's going to be like we are
Yeah.
all going to be end up doing this. That was probably about 18 months ago. I mean, and
Yeah.
even the growth of it over the last 18 months and the power behind it now,
Mm.
it's just, I mean, where do you see it going?
Well, this is the interesting question because I do get a little bit of resistance when I talk about it on training and online because, you'll get the comment of, I can't believe you're promoting something that's going to end up taking your job. So there's definitely that fear of, AI is going to replace us. It's not. It's not.
Right.
I would argue that within education, and I think this is another reason why you get a lot of teachers leaving schools to do things like tutoring because what gets everyone into the job is the human connection of education.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
what we've done over the past decade or even longer is we're almost forced to just see students as bits of data, and
Yeah.
our job is to get them from here to there. And
Mm,
so we've already massively neglected the human element of education.
mm,
Um, and what AI should be doing is putting a much bigger focus back on that. So again, if teachers are using this AI to take away the admin side, and I just always think if I can get AI to write something as well as I can, as a time poor teacher, is that then the best use of my time? And actually, what I'm finding is going back to what you were saying, you're able to think about things more. I'm not having this to-do list where oh, I've got to try. Well, I can get AI to help with a lot of those admin tasks.
yeah.
Now I've got time to think and develop, and how can I make that idea a better lesson, and so on. Um, so yeah, so it should be helping teachers become better teachers effectively. This idea that it's going to replace, no, because what the AI can do is it can help you teach the curriculum, but you're still needed to develop the whole child.
Mm,
And it may well open up discussions about what is the true purpose of education. Is it, to get children through a SATs test, or is it to actually educate children to become well-rounded, happy
yeah.
human beings?
Yeah.
And
Right.
AI is never going to be able to help with that.
No.
It's like what AI can do is generate questions for you, but once that penny drops with a student, AI will never be able to make that child understand just how much of an achievement that is. That
Yeah.
takes a human, and that human connection and that relationship you build with students to be able to make that child realize that no, you can do this,
Mm.
and what you've worked so hard to get to this point is such an incredible achievement. So yeah, what I'm hoping will happen is that more teachers will embrace it to make their lives easier, which will hopefully make them better teachers. And that will have a huge impact on students because, like we say, we're not just then teaching the curriculum, we're developing the whole child.
And just to echo something from your own experience there is it's not it is about the teaching, don't get me wrong, and yeah, get somebody else to do the heavy lifting, get AI to do it because that's amazing. But then there's a positive outcome, which is that we have this finite amount of time daily and weekly. If we do claw back 10 hours a week, we
Oh
can
yeah,
that on something else. So whether it's going to the gym, whether it's like, I don't know, taking like a different class in the evening that you're passionate about. So you can spend this time in other ways rather than just being like work focused, school focused. And
yeah,
I
yeah. And it's a
really,
weird
really,
job. Like teaching's a weird job where
yeah,
you're almost deemed you're almost looked down on if you like that. If you're very passionate about having a work-life balance and you have a switch off and you're like, no, my evenings are mine, my weekends are mine, you will get looked down on by other colleagues because this, I don't know where it's come from, but there is almost this notion in teaching that for you to be a good teacher, you have to dedicate every waking moment to this job of teaching. And there's too many teachers who buy into it. They wear it as a badge of honor, this
mm,
sort of teacher martyrism where they think they have to sacrifice their own health and well-being, and it's wrong because burnout's a real thing. And what annoys me is it gets projected onto everyone that you should be the same. And you'll get schools that will put these teachers on a pedestal who are working every day, and compare you to it. And it's a weird job where whenever you're not doing something about teaching, you feel that weird teacher guilt, like you should be doing something about teaching, and that's got to change. It
Mm.
really has, because who's going to be better in the classroom? The teacher who's, like you say, gone to the gym or gone out with their friends for the evening, done a pub quiz and socialized, or the teacher who's stuck in their house till midnight marking when they know full well the child's not even able to
Yeah.
read the marking.
Yeah.
But
Oh, it's ridiculous. Yeah.
it's what
We did a funny
happened.
video with the verbal feedback thing the other week.
Oh, yeah.
Because that gave me anxiety, just
Yeah.
the VF, like just pointless tasks.
Well,
Um,
that's what you get when you work in an education system that's driven by fear and that obsession with the accountability. It forces schools to make decisions not out the best interest of the children, but out of fear, and that's where we
yeah.
don't make use common sense, and
Do
why we
you,
still don't move forward with it.
like you said, you have been out. I don't know if the word outspoken's fair, really. I feel like whenever I've heard you talk about the teaching retention crisis, it's always been level-headed facts. Let's just call it
Yeah.
that. Where do you see the solution? So we've got, say, AI is part of the solutions. What else do you think would need to happen to help people stay or even attract back people?
Yeah. So flexible working needs to come in, um, which obviously the government have made a couple of announcements. They've said that teachers should be able to take their PPA from home, but it's all well and good saying that. But then if you don't fund schools to get adequate cover, you're not able to do it. So it's all this. We've got the right intentions, but we don't actually implement it. That's the problem in education. You can,
No follow up or follow through, is there? Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and most of it just comes down to funding.
Mm,
Um, you need massive reforms with Ofsted. You can't have the people who are holding teachers account to not then be accountable themselves. And this is where they never change because they don't have to answer to anyone. No one holds them to account. And
mm,
so they can get away with carrying on. And I'm not saying all inspectors are like this, but the system itself is very much about not supporting or improving schools, it's scrutinizing schools.
mm.
And whether they like to admit it or not, Ofsted are the main reason why there's a massive retention crisis because it all just filters down. When it's such high stakes, when the outcomes of these inspections mean people's jobs are on the line, they are
Mm.
going to do anything in their power. And that just goes from the leadership to then to teachers and so. So, funding's a massive thing. We need a complete reset with SEND reforms. Like that is, I think, one of the biggest issues in that we are, and again, teachers take the brunt of this, but so much of it is out of their hands.
Mm.
We recognize that most schools do not have the provisions in place to support children with particular needs. And I think, again, one of the biggest issues on teachers is not it's the compassion fatigue of it. So it's sort of working in a system that is failing your children, and there is nothing you can do about it. You are working harder than you've ever worked before, yet you still know you are failing those children because there is not the resources, there is not the support, there's
Mm.
not the external agencies that can help. And that has a massive impact on people's mental health.
Yeah.
So I think if we were to get a massive, a complete reset when it comes to send, and that could definitely improve things. But I think what it comes down to more than anything else is I just want the profession to be trusted again as professionals.
Mm.
I think workload, as we've mentioned, is the number one thing driving teachers out of the profession. And that just comes from a lack of trust. Teachers spend or work, whatever it is now, 57, 60 hours a week on average. So much of that time doesn't have an impact. It's more about you proving that you're doing the job. So if we were to create a system that trusted teachers once again as professionals, then that's going to improve your well-being. You don't
Mm.
need the gestures. You don't need the chocolates in a mug. You don't need the well-being yoga staff meet. You just need to be trusted. And if you
Mm.
are trusted, and therefore your workload's being reduced, you've then got time. And
Mm.
that's what we want. We want time in the evenings to do what things outside of teaching. We want time at the weekend. So, you know, I often think, is our education system broken beyond repair? Possibly, but I always like to hope. I always like to hope that we can turn things
Yeah,
around, because
yeah.
ultimately teaching is, when you get down to the bare bones of it, the best job in the world. Like,
Mm.
there's very few jobs you can do in your lifetime where you genuinely know you are making a difference to people's lives. Now, I know we live in a very materialistic, capitalist world where it's almost you're conditioned to feel happiness when you're spending money on things. But I think if you were to ask any teacher on their deathbed, whether they taught for 6 months or 60 years, on reflection, when you look back on your life, I don't think you'll ever regret that time where you were a teacher, because you were doing a job that made a difference.
Mm.
And I think what we've done over the past decade is we've taken advantage of people's compassion and people's goodwill to sort of exploit them, overwork them.
Yeah.
And I think that needs to change. I think if we can get that change back so we can respect teachers, not
Goodwill
see them
wins
as
out,
enemies.
doesn't it? There's only
Oh,
so much you can do on goodwill.
yeah, yeah. But it
Um,
almost feels like the system's propped up by people's goodwill now.
100% agree. I used to say, I've been out of the classroom now. It's coming up to its seventh year, and for the last couple of years I was in, that's exactly what I used to say. It's like we are propping it up
Yeah,
our own time with our own money because we are having
yeah,
to buy these resources ourselves and then make it work so that
yeah,
we can do the job in the way that we want to do it because we want to change people's lives. We want to move them from point A to point B, not because for data, but because we care about the kids that we've got in our class. So yeah, I totally get
absolutely.
that. That's fascinating. I know that we could probably talk for hours just on that subject. So
Yeah.
I'm keeping my eye on the time, and I won't
No, no,
keep
no
it for
worries.
much longer. There's one other thing I'd like to like dip our toe into, which is the whole again back to technology,
Yeah, yeah.
particularly with a parental view on because you're saying
Uh-huh.
you've got triplets. How old are your triplets?
13,
Oh,
13 they are now. Yeah.
wow. So
Yeah.
you're going through it all at the same time. You got the teenagers
Yeah,
around. Excellent.
it's funny because people always give me that reaction,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I had them quite young, so I was what, 25, I think.
Okay.
And so a lot of my friends now are in the early stages of parenting, and they always say that I don't know how you did it with three. And don't get me wrong, first couple of years were in really intensive, but I've got a friend now who's got three under five, so he's got like a 5, 3, and a 1 year old, and I'm
Yeah.
like, that's harder. That
Yeah.
is so much harder than
I
when
think
we
it
had
would
three at the
be.
same. I think I think at that age, 5, 3, and 1, because
Yeah.
you've got three of them
Yeah.
at different ages with different interests and so on. I think that probably the first couple of years was by far the hardest for us. People often ask me, how do you get through it? I can't remember. It is a bit of a blur. And the one thing I would say about being the parent of a multiple, and anyone listening to this, if they have got twins or triplets, I think the biggest downside is that because it's so intensive, you almost wish the time away. And I know this sounds really
Getting
bad,
to the
but
next stage.
yeah,
Yeah.
we've just got to get them sleeping through. We've just got
Yeah.
to get them out of nappies. And before long, they're now teenagers who think you're the most cringy person in the world. And I'd give anything to have like an afternoon of them as babies again, because I almost feel like, and obviously I did make the most of the time, but you almost look back going, "Oh, I wish I didn't get as, I wish I didn't moan as much about that time, because yeah, it was hard, but they were just beautiful. They were just incredible little babies that you'd never get that time. If you have
Yeah.
three at separate times, you can make a mistake and then fix it for the next one. Whereas we never had that, and it was,
Yeah.
it was intense. It was three times but then things just seemed to go quick. We only had one first day of school, we only had one last day of school, and that was challenging when you've got a job where you're traveling here, there, and everywhere, and again, so. But I wouldn't change for the world. They're incredible. They're amazing kids. They really, really are. They're an absolute, yeah, it's a privilege being their dad.
Oh, bless you, man. That's what a lovely thing to say.
Yeah.
It leads me into like, how do you feel like look, you're obviously a champion for ICT. Although we should change to
Mm.
computing really like because that's really what it
Yeah,
is
yeah.
now. But technology as a whole, like you obviously see the positive side of it. How do you feel from a parental aspect, like with your children growing up in this
Yeah.
age?
Yeah, it is. So again, it's a question I get asked a lot, because I go into schools and I do this technology training, and I will get resistance from teachers where they're like, "Well, I don't want to use any more technology in schools because children spend enough time on a screen outside of school." And I get that. I think excessive screen time is having a real detrimental impact
Mm.
on children. And so I get that, but I would always argue that I don't think all screen time is equal. I think it's very much dependent on what you use the screens for. And I think for the majority of kids who are given a smartphone as a sort of digital pacifier, so to speak, yeah,
Yeah.
they're going to use it in a bad way. All they're going to do is consume content, and that's going to lead them to being addicted to it, constantly chasing that next little dopamine hit. If we use the technology in the right way, I think it has the potential to remove barriers for children so they can access the rest of the curriculum. I'm a massive advocate of technology to make learning more accessible. And I've seen this with my own son. So my two lads are both dyslexic, and one struggles a lot more than the other. And again, during the pandemic, during the lockdowns, when we were doing the home learning, I was really getting him familiar with some of the accessibility tools, so dictation tools and the ability where the iPad can read aloud text to him, and that just helped him progress so much. It was unbelievable. And the school he was at weren't very key. They were very much, everything's got to be in a book, which led to him not really enjoying primary school as much because that was just a barrier. But since he started secondary school, we've been able to get him to use his iPad in lessons. And I'd say this last parents' evening that we went to was the first parents' evening where it's normally my daughter Lily is like a teacher's pet. She's the perfect child to teach. She's amazing. The progress she makes is brilliant, which I always find funny because she is amazing, but she can be a little bit of a pain for us. She's very much sort of she'll be the perfect person to everyone else and then just offload onto us. Which you take because as a parent, I'm a safe space and I get that. It's funny because you do get some parents who are like, why is my child acting up at home? Yet they're fine at school. And it's like, well, they're your child.
Yeah, it's just
That's a
what they
compliment.
do.
It
Yeah,
feels,
it is. It's
yeah, they
hard for
feel
parents to
safe.
understand, right? Yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah, it's this whole thing. Oh well, I've seen it where parents are moaning to schools like, "Oh, my child's being a pain at home. What are you going to do about it?" And the school's like, "Well, they're fine in school," and the parents, "Oh yeah, but they're masking in school." It's like, yeah, everyone does.
Yeah, yeah, but that's kind
Everyone,
of the point. It's why
I
it's
mask.
happening. Yeah.
I mask when I'm in school, so that's part and part. There are
Yeah.
times you've got to do things that you don't necessarily want to, but you got to do it. It's part of life. And so it might be that when they come home, they offload. In fact, a teacher told me the term for this. And let me see if I can bring it up. So this is an actual term now. It's called um, after school restraint collapse.
Oh, wow.
It's this
Okay.
idea that children will be, following the rules on the best behavior at school, and then when they
Yeah.
get home, it's sort of this way off, which I
Yeah.
see with my daughter,
Yeah.
and even my sons as well. That's the whole point of parenting is that you are their safe space. So
Yeah.
sometimes they might be a little bit, you know, uh, short fuse, have a bit of a short fuse here, but as long as not being massively disrespectful, I'd much rather that they're nice to everyone else, and then occasionally they might be a bit arsy with me. But yeah, so Lily's always a teacher's pet. Charlie's always trying, and Harry, there was always struggles, this, that, and the other. This was the first parents' evening where every teacher was just talking about how much progress Harry's making,
Oh,
uh, because of the technology.
right.
And
Okay.
it was that Harry was on board with it, but some of the teachers were a little bit resistant to it because it was different from what they've always done. But now even the teachers are seeing the benefit and seeing that actually he can get his knowledge and understanding down. And so that just for me shows that not all screen time is bad. However, I am very resistant to giving children devices at home.
Mm.
Um, I think, and just because you see the impact it has in school, I see the level of behavioral disruption. The behavior is one of the biggest issues affecting teachers now, and I'm not saying it's just screens, but they definitely contribute to it. That the attention span. It is so, and that's before we even bring in the topic of social media.
Mm.
Now I resisted. It's only recently that I've allowed my kids, and I did even then I was sort of forced into it just because they were going on and on. And I get the conflict we face as parents that if they're not on certain platforms, their friendship circles are, and they can then feel like they're being left out. And so I did finally give in. But then I saw a quote the other day that just made me feel so incredibly guilty. And it said, as soon as you give your kids access to social media, you end their childhood.
Oh,
And it's tough that, but I sort of agree with it. I really do because these social media platforms, they're not, they're just so dangerous, you know. Now, so what I've done is I've said to the kids, and we've always had an open discussion about it, said, look, if I give you access to YouTube, whatever, I'm not doing it unlimited. It's not a case that you can have hours upon hours a day. We've got to come to an agreement of restricting it, because if I give you free reign, you'll be on it every minute of the day, right? They just will. And kids were, and so they tried it, and I was like, so you tell me how many hours a day, and they were like 3 hours. I was like, right, you've already failed the first test. So they sort of get an hour a day.
Right.
And then I make it clear to them, look, if you're going to go on it, you're not having your phones in your bedroom. I want your phones before you go to bed, and I'll charge them in my room, so there's not that temptation to have a little look by bed. And I will check what you've been watching. So that's the trade-off. You know, if you want access to it, you've got to agree that I am allowed to look at what you've been watching, because it's not that I don't trust my kids. I don't trust these algorithms, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, so I check them every so often. I try and keep as much of a close eye on it as possible, because ultimately they can be exposed to some of the most dangerous,
Mm.
harmful content. Now, my little tip here, if there are any parents listening to this, what I also do when they bring me their phones is I sort of hack their algorithms. So I talk a lot on my training about how we've got to be in control of our social media algorithms and not let it control us. Again, it's all AI based. The,
Yeah.
the content social media serves you is based on everything you do on the platform, everything you like, everything you watch, everything you comment on, you share, all these sort of not just what you do, people similar to you. So it uses data of people who
Yeah.
live in the same house, have the same interests, hobby, and that's because social media wants you to stay on the platform, right? It's not about showing you useful, relevant, trustworthy content. It doesn't care the content, the quality of the content it shows you, as long as the content keeps you on the platform. Because the longer you stay on social media, the more adverts it sends you, and
Mm.
you don't have to spend money on the adverts. You don't have to what just seeing that those adverts appearing in your newsfeed makes the platform money. So this is where I think the business model of social media fundamentally needs to change, because we are not the customer of social media, we're the product.
Mm.
And it is they have an economic incentive to keep us hooked in. So it
Mm.
doesn't really care about showing you stuff you want to see. Social media is more bothered about showing you stuff you can't look away from. And I
Mm.
think the biggest issue is that so many of us aren't aware of that. We don't understand how these algorithms work, which is why we're very susceptible to being manipulated, influenced, and in lots of cases, sort of radicalized into a certain way of thinking. So, what I do then is I will use when my kids bring me their devices, I'll go into their social media and I'll start inputting data. So if they are going to spend an hour on it, the algorithm will serve them decent stuff, you
What
know?
are you putting in? I'm intrigued.
Oh, just any like rugby tutorial videos, football
Okay.
skill videos, whatever they're studying at school.
Yeah.
They were doing Romeo and Juliet recently in English, so I hammered that in. And it was interesting because I went into the kids' school and did some training. And when I mentioned that, the English teacher actually said that was one of the best results they got in that unit on Romeo. So
Right.
it
It
does
does
sort of
work.
work. But
Wow.
there's a serious point with this. So I've been sharing that on my training a lot. This idea of, as parents, check your kids' algorithms. And I was in a school in Newcastle, and I went back to do some follow-up training recently. And one of the teachers came to me and said, "I promised my wife I'll talk to you about this. So do you know in June when you came and did the AI train?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "And you were talking about monitoring your kids' algorithms." I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, it really resonated with me, and I decided to go home and have a look at my kids' social media." His 14-year-old son. And he was like, I thought the worst thing I'll find here is probably following a couple of OnlyFans models or whatever.
Mm.
And he said he just could not get over how bad this algorithm was, because every other video was around self-harm and
Mate.
suicide.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And he genuinely said, he said, had it not been for your training that day, I don't think my son would be here, because they've
Wow.
obviously gone on and got him. And it was that severe when they've talked to him about it. He was,
Oh,
it spiraled that far
yeah.
that he was in that mindset and thinking
Wow.
that was his only way out. And I said, did you have any? He's like, no, it was a little bit quiet. It was a little bit reserved, but I had no idea, absolutely no idea. And the only thing his son had actually searched into, I think it was TikTok, he said, was the term mental health.
And that's where it took him.
And that's where it got, because
Oh,
the algorithms, the AI can't
yeah.
differentiate between
Yeah.
good, supportive mental health content. What's but it just shows stuff, and as soon as that lad watched something, that triggers the AI to go, oh, they like this, send them more, send them more, send them more. So this is how dangerous it can be, and this is why, most adults are struggling to navigate it, let alone children who don't have any experience of the world. So,
Yeah,
Australia have come out and said that they're banning social media for under 16s, which I can fully
all
get
that.
behind. And I
Mm.
and I wish it had happened in this country because I think,
What is
you know,
it at the moment? Is it 14 for some and 13 for others, isn't
oh,
it?
13 for majority, I think.
But I
But
know the reality is not that.
oh, I mean, I think something like a quarter of 5 to 7 year olds have their own smartphone now
It's crazy, isn't it?
or device. Yeah, it's and I genuinely think we'll look back at this time in human history and deem it one of the most embarrassing
Mm.
times for what we're doing, where we're giving children access to these sort of tools.
Yeah,
And obviously, there's only so much we can do as teachers, but
yeah,
we should be doing a lot more around educating children with it, and sort of not that's not encouraging them to use it, but obviously educating them so when they are old enough, they know how to do it responsibly and safely. Because again,
yeah.
it can be a tool for good.
Well, that's it, isn't it? It's you go down the line of almost demonizing it, and yet it
Yeah,
can be a tool like because you champion these things, not devices, but like the whole idea of technology as a
yeah.
tool, good, and it'd be really positive. And yet on the other hand, we're like saying actually this is not a good thing, and but it can be if we're accessing it in the right way and we understand what
It's
will
that
happen.
it
Yeah,
it's that understanding, that education around it. So, I'm here now doing this, and everything we've talked about
yeah,
has come from me using social media in a positive way.
yeah.
So I see the benefits. It can be such a positive tool, but then it can also be negative, and we've seen the impact that has on decisions we've made as a society, as a democracy over the past few years. And yeah, it is a worry. But like I say, education is key with it, and I'm hoping that the next curriculum that comes in really puts more of an emphasis on educating the next generation to not make the same mistakes that we've made.
Let's hope so. So, Matt, I'm keeping my eye on the time, and I know you've got to shoot in a second. So I'm going to
No,
say
no
thank
worries.
you now. Thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate it. And I know that we've
Thank
really
you.
only scratched the surface with some of the things we've been speaking about, but I really appreciate you giving us this time. Just one last thing.
Yeah.
We'll share as many of the useful links that you would have. So can you send me anything that would be useful just to share within the community, whether it's like the
Hmm.
books, the tour dates, Teach Mate, anything that'd be useful to share, and we'll make sure it gets out onto
Oh,
everything.
brilliant. Oh, thank you. Cheers. Thanks for having me. Enjoyed the chat.